Alright, hello again everyone, this is Annalise, and today I'll be doing a quick walkthrough on Excel basics. So if Excel is something you've wanted to learn, but you just never had the opportunity or the class, or maybe you know a little bit about Excel, but it's been a little while, I'm going to walk you through some of the basics today, including some basic styling commands, cell references, formulas, a little bit of conditional formatting. So just the very basics, because I plan to do some more videos in the future about some of the slightly more complex stuff. So as usual, we're going to be grabbing a resource. So going to our website, sys.gvsu.edu/tildewick/resources.html. Alright, and we're looking at 527 Excel Basics, and we're going to grab the Excel demo file. Right click, save link as, and then put it wherever you'd like. I'm going to put it on my desktop just for convenience. Alright, I'm going to open that up. Alright, first thing we have to do is enable editing, otherwise you won't be able to do anything here. Alright, and you'll notice we have basically a very ugly file right now in just one sheet. And just as a matter of kind of the language we use with Excel, this entire thing is one workbook, and this is one worksheet. If we were to add more, there would be more worksheets all still within one workbook. So first thing we're going to do is kind of make this look a little bit nicer. You'll notice that we have columns A through E full of data, and this appears to be the title. So if we highlight A through E in row 1, and if we click this button here under the Alignment tab, this is going to merge and center it, and now it's one cell. And we're going to apply a cell style over in the Styles tab. So we're going to make that title. Notice that it changed the font as well as the size. We're going to do the same thing for attendance records. We're going to merge and center, and this time we're going to make it header 4. Alright, now you'll notice we have a bit of data here, and it looks like we've got some headers. So we're going to highlight this. Okay. If we go to the Insert tab at the top on the ribbon, and then click Table, and this has our range we selected, and note we want to make sure this is clicked because this is a header row and we want it to read it as such. Alright, so we've just created our own table, and I'm actually just going to change the color so it's a little bit more legible. So we have our header row in dark orange, and then alternating colors for our data. One other small stylistic thing we're going to do is I'm going to highlight my headers, and if I go to Home, this little arrow is the orientation, and I'm going to change it to an angle for counterclockwise. Alright, and then one other thing you may notice is that the text here is getting cut off because the width of column D is too small. So there's a couple different things we can do. First, I'll show you how to auto adjust the sizing. And we could even just do it I'll just show you in column D first. If you move your pointer or the mouse over to the border between the next column to the right, you'll see it comes up with a black 2 arrows in a line. If you double click, it will auto size and auto adjust that column. And you can actually do the same thing for the entire table. And you'll notice it smushes it up. And if you were to drag it, it will make all of them bigger, etc. I'm just going to set them all to a standard width. So if you right click, after you've highlighted the columns, go to column width. And I'm going to make it 15. Alright, so now they're all the same size. It looks pretty uniform and pretty nice. And the next thing I'm going to do is I want to rename this. It's called Sheet 1. That doesn't look very professional. I'm going to right click on my Worksheet tab, rename. I'm going to call this Attendance. Alright, and just to be fun, let's change the tab color. So I'm going to make it orange to match my table. And you'll notice that since it's selected, the lettering here appears in green, but if we were to move on to another tab, it'll change to black. And you'll see that in just a second. What we're also going to do is if you right click again, I'm going to show you how to move or copy. So if you just wanted to move it, you could, you'll see the order of all the sheets here, and you could select where you want it. We're going to move to end, but we're going to create a copy. So this will duplicate this worksheet and push it to the space after the current tab. All right, now you'll notice we have attendance 2. This is now the active sheet, so it appears in green, and our old sheet, tab color, we already set to orange, and the writing's in black. All right, and let's rename this sheet. Let's call it calculations. All right. So one very important part of Excel is the idea of a cell reference. So I already mentioned a cell earlier. A cell is any intersection between a column and a row. So this is cell A1, and technically we go straight from A to F because we merged and centered these. But each of these is its own cell, and so that's how we reference things within Microsoft Excel. And there's 3 main types of cell references. I'll put cell reference, an example. So we're going to make another small table here. So the first is an absolute cell reference. An example of that would be, as I just mentioned earlier, cell A1. Okay. So it's an absolute cell reference. What this means is we will not adjust the column. And when you see the $sign, that means absolute. So same column, same row. So let's say we were to move the formula to, or copy and paste the formula to a different cell, we will always be referencing back to A1. It will not be adjusted. It's not dynamic or mutable or flexible. The second type, which is the more dynamic one, is a relative cell reference. So such as A1. This means that the column and the row are subject to change based on what context you're using the cell reference in, or like where you reference it. We'll get examples of that in just a little bit. And the last main type is the mixed cell reference. And this could be either an absolute column with a relative row, or a relative column with an absolute row. In this example, it means that we would always be working in column A, that won't change. We might be working in different rows. In this second example, this means that we could be working in any different column, but we will only be working exclusively in row 1. All right, and just for fun to practice our table making skills, let's go to Insert Table. We do have headers. Let's make that orange as well. Let's adjust the orientation. All right, so things are looking pretty good here. Let's try messing with a few formulas now. So formulas are similar to, we do it a lot in computer science, where you might say if the first name is Jillian, then return the years in WIC, something like that. And so the first thing we're going to do is maybe we want to know how many members are in the attendance records. So we'd go to last row and we would say count of. You'll notice there's 2 very similar ones. Count returns how many, and you'll see you have a little helper hint here. Count returns how many cells hold a numeric value. So if we were to do count here, and if we do a parenthesis, and we could either highlight the range, notice it'll say table 13, which is technically the name of this table. First name, because that is the column header for the table. Or we could actually do it manually, so A3 through the colon indicates through A8. And notice it's highlighted. And we actually don't need A3, that was my bad, because that's just a header, and I'm on A4. Okay, and so this should return 0. Why? Because Jillian is not a number, Monica is not a number, etc. However, if we were to fill this formula across the columns here, so you'll see if you go to the lower right hand corner of the cell, if you drag to the right, what it's going to do is it's going to autofill these cells. So here's a great example of a relative cell reference. We said A4 to A8. Now we've moved the formula over 1 column, and therefore the relative cell references will also shift over 1 column. So we went from A4 to B8, A4 to A8. Now it's auto adjusted B4 to B8. So Excel is really smart like that. It's kind of nice. You'll notice here we have 5 because we have 5 numeric values. So that's count. What's going to be more useful here is if I said I wanted to grab the number of people in attendance, I want to use count of, so that counts the just the number of non-blank cells. And 5, and we should get 5 across all of them if we were to fill it. So let's count and count up. Another one we want to maybe try is sum. So a couple different ways you could do this. If you go up to the Home tab on the ribbon, the Editing pane, and then this is the Auto Sum button, it will automatically sum the values that it thinks you want, which is correct. So here it actually gave us a subtotal. 109 is a function number within subtotal. We don't need to worry about that. And years in WIC is the column that we're referencing within the table. That's a complicated way to do it, but all of sum is neat, saves you time. If you want to do it yourself, you can just type in sum. And please note, I didn't mention this earlier, but all formulas must start with the equal sign. And if you want to use the equal sign in a cell, you need to surround it with quotes, unless you want it to read as a formula. So again, we're just going to sum these cells and it should return 8 again. Now what if we want to get a little bit more complicated and we only want to add cells if they meet a certain criteria? So this might be like in Java, if you were to say if, maybe let's say if the student.major, so if the major property of the student object equals CS, then I want to add the years in WIC. So how you do that in Excel is you would say equals sum if range. Range is what range we're going to check against the criteria. So we're going to check this range. So we're going to check major. The criteria is we want them to be CS. And the sum range, so where we would add if the criteria were met, we're going to add these cells. 7, and that's correct because if we did, the sum was 8, right? And the only person, we only have one who is IS. So 8 minus 1 is 7. So those are just a few quick formulas. The last one is definitely helpful, but it can be a little bit confusing to understand the first time. So let's make a new cell over here. We'll say member, and the member I want to look up is Jillian. We're going to use a VLOOKUP function, supposition, a VLOOKUP function, which is a vertical lookup function, which means we're going to feed it in a value. It's going to look across columns, hence vertical lookup, and it's going to return the matching value. So our lookup value, we're going to grab this cell, I8, because that's what we want to look up. Table array, we could either say table 13 or we could highlight it and it'll fill table 13. Column index number is the value that we want to return is in which column. So since table 13 is our array, this means this is column 1, 2, 3, we want to return position, which is column 4. The last one is a true or false. If we say true, it's going to give us an approximate, which might be helpful if you're looking up things where maybe you say if you buy 5 tickets, the price is this. If you buy 10 or more, the price is this. So when you're using or more or less, you might want to use approximate, but here we want to go exact. Alright, and we got president returned. And now just to demonstrate, again, absolute versus relative, if we were to drag this down, we're going to get an error. The non-available error means something has gone wrong. And so what's happened here is we're still pointing at table 13, we're still returning column 4, and we still want to be false. The issue is because here we only did a relative cell reference to I8, which is this cell here. When we copied it down, because we moved down a row, the formula also moved down a row, and it went to I9. So we're going to make this absolute. The shortcut is F4 lets you toggle between, so I don't know if you can see that, lets you toggle between the different cell reference types. So we want it to be $, I8. And now, if we were to carry this through, they're all going to be fine. I'm going to delete those. And we're going to try one other thing. So let's grab the data in this table and just paste it down a few rows. Okay, it's no longer a table, but what we do have is a range of cells. So we're going to do what's called a named range. This is the equivalent in Excel of creating an identifier for some type of variable, like if you were in Java. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can go to define name, go to the name manager, or the easiest way is we've highlighted the cells. We go to the upper left name box, and I'm going to call it WIC members. All right, now you'll notice that if we were to highlight this range, that's what will appear in our box. If we go to name manager, we have WIC members as a named range. Why is this useful? Say we wanted to do the same thing as earlier where we wanted to look up someone's position, and we want to do it with VLOOKUP function. So lookup value, we're going to point back here. I'm not going to worry about making it absolute because I'm not going to copy the formula anywhere, but that's something that you could consider. Table array, instead of highlighting anything or going back, because it could even be on a different worksheet, maybe I wanted to reference something back in attendance even. Instead of doing all that, I'm just going to start typing, and you'll notice our named range is popped up. So I hit tab to autofill that, and you'll notice it's pointing to our named range. So it's a good way to be descriptive about the data you're using and to save yourself time. Again, we're still turning column 4 and false. Alright, so that's how we can use a named range to clarify our data a little bit. The last thing I'm going to show you really quickly is just a very bare minimal of conditional formatting. We can do this more in the next video, because usually you use it more when you have more numerical data. We only have one column here, so a little bit sparse, but we would highlight the data we're interested in. Go to conditional formatting, and we have a lot of different options here. So highlight cells rules, and let me give an example. So here it's going to highlight, and I want it to actually be, let's make it yellow. Okay, so anything that's over 1.5 has been highlighted, anything that's over 1.9 is highlighted, anything that's over 2.0 would be highlighted, but we have no data there. We would do 0, so maybe you only want positive numbers. So that's how that would work. And again, you could do between, contains, a lot of options to highlight cells. Top bottom is saying I want to grab the top so many items or the bottom so many items. So maybe I just want the top one item. And you'll notice that we actually have 3 because they're tied. But that would be a good example. There's some other options. Data bars, you can kind of see how this correlates. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You can just do it with different fills to indicate that. Color scales are kind of similar to data bars, but this isn't a great example. It makes a lot more sense when you have more numbers, so we'll do that next time. But maybe you can put some data bars in. It's kind of fun. So that's the very basics of conditional formatting. Again, this is basically saying if it meets some criteria, then I want the style of the cell to be adjusted in such a manner. And you can define your own rules and manage the rules that you already have set. So notice our data bar rule appears here, and we could delete it if we wanted to. Take that out and apply that. Okay, and now it's gone. So those were just kind of 10 little basics of Excel. By no means is this all of Excel, just the bare minimum that you kind of need to get rolling on your own. So again, cell references are extremely important. Working with tables is important because you can filter things. Just to show you that really quickly at the end here, this little arrow you can use to filter. If we only want, let's say, CS majors, can unhighlight IS, and now it's gone. There's other ways to do that, but this is one simple way. So now hopefully you've either brushed up on your Excel skills or you've learned about Excel for the first time and you're really enjoying it because it's a really fun program. But I am planning to release part 2 to this where we work a little bit more in depth with maybe a few things that you haven't heard of before, like how to do data validation in Excel, maybe some scroll bars, and getting you started on how to make your own macros. So hopefully I will see you for the second video, and thanks for watching. Good luck!